Thank you, Vice Chair and members of the committee, for once again allowing me to speak before this committee on behalf of my constituents and their children. I think most of you know me by now as someone who strives to work across the aisle to find common ground and work on common sense issues together in the best interest of the residents of the state. It's with that spirit in mind and knowing that we have members on this committee from both sides of the aisle that are experiencing the same school funding challenges that have come before you today. It is my hope that this committee will be enlightened by circumstances not commonly known that have had devastating consequences on school districts. Otherwise, we're not only performing with fiscal responsibility, we're consistently working to improve the education delivered to the children of those districts. More importantly, I want to ensure this body understands the cumulative effects, and I stress the cumulative effects of what will now be 7 years of devastating S2 impacts on these school districts, and not just focus on the funding of this year. In addition, let's be clear on what state aid is. State aid is the portion of residents' income taxes that are paid to the state coming back to support the schools in which their children are to get an education. What you'll find is that the state aid coming back to these school districts is disproportionate to the income taxes being paid to the state. In my legislative district 12, the overall loss this year was $1.5 million. And while most of the 16 school districts I represent actually did see slight increases in funding, 2 districts, Old Bridge, saw a cut of $2.5 million, and Jackson, for the 7th year in a row, saw a cut this year of $4.5 million. The Plumsted School District in Ocean County saw an increase, but again, I want to ensure this body understands the cumulative effect of the last 7 years, and it will be Jackson and Plumsted that I specifically call out today. In my opinion, the crux of the problem starts with the Department of Education's determination of equalization aid. That calculation drives the funding of other line items, and if the calculations of aid reports are done at every school district show that the equalization is at or above, other line items are ignored. In the case of Jackson, from the start of the S2 cuts, the DOE said the Jackson School District was overfunded by $16 million. This seems to be the root of the problem, especially when you take into account real metrics like student-teacher ratios. In Jackson, the high schools now have classes with 30-1. In Plumsted, it's now 28-1 at all levels. These are far from recommended ratios, and given the recent reports on both learning loss and the psychological needs as a result of COVID, now is the worst time for schools to be operating at these levels. In addition, with Jackson, the total of funding cuts is more than $20 million at this point, while they're reporting that for the last 3 years, and the DOE's own report provided to the district shows enrollment is flat, with a difference of only 86 students out of over 7,000 in the last year. In that same time period, the district cut 200-plus positions, certain sports teams no longer exist, and as mentioned, have class sizes of 30-1. And for the first time in its history, the district last year had to take a $10 million loan. To pour salt in the wound, they have to pay the $160,000 screw monitor that's being added because of that loan. So how did the DOE react this year? They cut the district another $4.5 million, which of course means it will just need to borrow more money. Even more, the DOE's own report outlines what the district actually should be getting for line items such as special education and transportation. For special ed, $7.7 million, the district's getting $5.2. For ESL and MLL, which virtually didn't exist in 2019, they're getting no additional funding. With regard to transportation, the DOE's own report calculates that to be $7.7. The district's getting $600,000, and they've been getting $600,000 for the past 7 years. The district had almost no private school funding needs for bus transportation 5 years ago. It was zero. It's now going to be $6.5 million. So to be clear, the budget itself for transportation is over $20 million. They're getting $600,000. Lastly, the DOE's own report calculates an amount under adequacy of $27.7 million, almost equal to the amount of funding they've been reduced over the last 7 years. Again, the DOE's own report calculates that the district needs that much more aid to operate just this year. And remember that that's after slashing over 200 positions and eliminating programs. In the same time period, Jackson residents sent the state significantly more dollars in income tax and are only receiving back a little more than $23 million. Here are some final metrics. My understanding was that while the administration claimed completely funding school funding formula for the first time ever, a total of 172 school districts across the state actually had their state aid cut. The total of those cuts equaled just over $104 million. The Newark City School District received almost all of it in $101 million. Now, that is no way an attack on that district. Everyone wants to see all students do well, but That district is receiving over $30,000 per student. The average state aid per student in Jackson is now $3,500. $30,000 in Newark, $3,500 in Jackson. Neighboring Thomas River, which I don't represent, less than $2,000. Again, to highlight the cumulative effects of the S2 cuts, Plumsted, which did see an increase this year, has already let me know that due to cumulative state aid cuts since 19, their District 2 will now have to request a loan. So that's 2 school districts in LD12 that now will be on the hook to the state for a loan, despite the amount of taxes paid by the residents of both school districts exceeding what they're getting back. Looking across the budget, last year I highlighted a line item of $13 million that was earmarked for a French art museum. And while I'm not against art, I was very clear about that, I'd rather see that $13 million go to school districts in desperate need of funding. In a sort of irony, former Governor McGreevey, who was expressed running for mayor of that city, has announced he wants to eliminate that project. He stated to date $53 million of state aid has been allocated to that project, but not spent. So I offer that to you as $53 million that should be clawed back and put toward the funding of our schools. Lastly, while I'm very supportive of the idea of fully funding pre-K program, as administration has suggested, I would only do so after funding our existing public school districts as we know them today. I ask for your support on behalf of the parents, teachers, and most importantly, the children of my district. And please carefully review the budget for items that can otherwise help them in funding items such as transportation and special education, taking into account not just this year, but the cumulative effects. Thank you.